Welcome back, guys. And from where we left off, made a little bit of progress. Not just a huge amount of work done, but enough to get us to the point where we're ready to prime. So, what have I done? Well, we left off when we were working with the canopy. I've done a little bit of work on the canopy, just to do a bit of seam work down the center and blending it in around the sides with a little Mr. Surface of 500. I've got a little bit of rescribing to do just in here, just to put the edge of the canopy back in, but I just found that when I put a primer coat down. We've done all the landing lights and the nav lights, blanked off the upper gun position with foam. A little bit of Mr. Surfacer just in here, the back of the wing root, just to fill a couple of very, very small holes, but nothing major. And then obviously we've used some foam and tape to mask off the Bombay and the wheel wells. Right, what else? Well, what else we've done is gotten the engines together, and we've painted the exhausts and the exhaust collector on the front. How I've painted that, looking at photos, it's obviously a stainless steel part, but with the heat and the oil about the engine, it's got that kind of oily, bronzy look about it with cooked oil and stuff like that. So what I actually did was paint a layer of, find the paint, put it away. Used X33 bronze, Tamiya's X33 bronze. Very, very thin base coat. It's actually not too bad. Some of Tamiya's metallic colours are pretty over pigmented, or the pigment size is very, very coarse. This one's not too bad. Give it a really good stir, really good mix. You don't need to thin it 50-50, maybe about 75-25. And lay down a coat of bronze just around the collector and over the exhausts. Let it cure, and then to kind of lift the sheen and give it that metallic stainless steel look is actually use stainless steel paint, but it wasn't Tamiya stainless steel. I've got some Mr. Hobby metal color stainless, and I think this is the buffable one. I think you can obviously mix, give it the really good shake, and you can use this stuff straight out of the jar. Got quite a bit of it knocking around, collected it over the years, and from a distance, probably about 6 inches back, I just dusted this stuff on because I didn't want to lose the bronzy color, didn't want to go wholly stainless steel, but I just wanted to give it that more metallic sheen. So I think I've done okay in achieving it. What I need to do now is just obviously let it cure overnight before I mask off the areas of the exhaust and the collector ring, so it leaves us with the cowlings to paint the camouflage pattern on. Obviously we needed to get the cooling flaps on the back, which also necessitated us putting the engine in, which fits really rather nicely. It's very dark in there, to be fair. And if we get a prop, we pop a prop on the boss. In all honesty, you're going to see it, but you're not going to see an awful lot. What you're going to see, you're definitely going to pick out little, shiny silver highlights. You're going to see the black. It is just quite dark in there, but looks okay. So those engines are good. They're going to be left for 24 hours for that paint, the metallic paints, to really cure up. I might put a satin varnish over them, or even a gloss varnish. Tamiya X22 clear. I'll probably just give it a light coat and a gloss varnish just to help protect the metalwork and try and keep some of that lovely sheen that's on it. And then we'll just let that dry at least 24 hours. If you go in too quickly with masking tape on gloss varnish, all you're going to do is just dull the varnish down, and worst case scenario, you're going to peel it off. So at least 24 hours, 48, maybe even more, to let it really cure up. We can always give it a quick speed up with a hairdryer, but you still need to leave at least 24 hours to really harden up and become that impervious coat that we want the gloss to be. So that's probably what I'm going to do first off. I'll do that off camera. The next job to do is actually prime this aircraft, and to prime it, I'm going for my preferred primer at the moment, which is XF63 German grey. It's that nice dark grey colour, so that'll help us when we do our pre-shading to get those sort of volumetric highlights, and it'll also give us a bit of an aid for getting those darker panel lines as we paint around them, and it'll give a nicely unified surface. So what have we got left to paint other than the airframe? So obviously we've got the engines, we've just spoken about that. We've got the bombs and we've got the propellers to paint, but other than that we're nearly there. The other thing we've done, or I've done, is I've painted the interior green on the inner surfaces of the flaps and on the inner surface of the bomb bay. What I'm thinking to do is actually I'm going to put a very, very, very light wash of non-oil on these, just the same to keep them in keeping with the flaps on that side. And then what I'm probably going to do is actually fit the flaps in the lowered position, because the way I paint is obviously I paint down to the edge at sort of nearly 90 degrees, so the overspray is just going to go away. It won't go in to the underside of the flap, and the same thing on this side is we're going to be painting down to the edge, so we should be able to use the flaps themselves to act as a mask for the interior color. So I think that's the next job I'm going to do. So I'm going to get on, we'll get a little light wash of non-oil just to help define the ribs and the shadow areas of these things, let it dry, and then we'll come back and look at getting them fitted. And then once they're fitted, we can actually think about getting some primer down and then looking at the painting. So see you back shortly. Welcome back, guys. So moving on from where we left off. So we got the interior Bombay doors done, and we've got the interior of the flaps done, and I've actually got the flaps adhered to the aircraft. I've stuck them on with a mixture of Tamiya extra thin quick set, reinforced with a little bit of super glue just for that sort of more instant glue and grab, just so we can hold them in position. They were a little tricky to get in place, just purely because you're holding the aircraft, trying to hold the flap and glue at the same time. So I didn't get them filmed. However, I don't think you've missed just a whole heap from the build. And the other thing I've managed to get done, sorry, I'm just tucking in some foam here, is obviously we've got all the underside now fully masked off, and then got the rear gun turret masked and painted the interior green. And before we put camouflage colours on it, we've also got the engines have dried. So we've masked off all the bits we want to retain that lovely metallic heated stainless look. And the last bit to do is to actually get primer down to unify the whole finish. So as discussed, I'm going to be using XF63, and I am going to be putting it down with my trusty Gaahleri GHAC98D airbrush with the larger 3.5 or 0.35 needle nozzle assembly. Good all-round airbrush. If you're just getting into airbrushing, that's the one to get. If you want something that will give you a little bit more refinement, then go for the Mobius. But as an all-rounder, this is a fantastic airbrush. Used it for a couple of years now Time since we knocking on. It's never let me down. Oh yes, the other thing I've done is we've got the landing light and the nav lights in. So XF63. Why, I hear you say? Well, basically it's a dark grey. It's a lovely paint, Tamiya XF63, so it will give a nice unified finish to the model, but it'll also give us a unified base colour to then do our next lot of painting on. So like for example here where we've got black, we've got burnt bronze, and we've got bare plastic, getting XF63 down will just harmonise all the plastic, all the parts to one all over colour. So that then means that everything else that we lay down on this is all going to be on an even base colour. And that's all it's about, is just getting that consistency of finish. If you have multiple different undercolours, then you will end up with varying shades of top coats. So it's quite important to have choose a primer colour, stick with it. So you can paint, you can prime in any colour you want. If you look at the Barbican YouTube channel from Canada, then the modelers, the armour modelers there, I can't remember the gentleman's name, fantastic modeler. I think he used to be the proprietor of Hornet Hobbies. He uses white to prime, and then he paints his models up from a white finish. I've seen everyone using grey, obviously black primer. Whatever you want to use. Whatever helps you get the paint finish you desire. And the other good thing about priming is we get to find all the little errors, and there will be some where we need to go in and fix. I've never built a model yet that hasn't had the need of going in to fix an error. If you look there on the end of the wing, I've got a glue mark I need to fix. That's just been shown up straight away with the painting. So usually when I prime, I start with all the edges and then I fill in the panel centers. Paint about 20 psi, and it is just a simple roughly 50-50 mix of Tamiya paint to thinners. We're just washing the model back and forth. There we go, so we've got a little area there at the end of the wing I need to fix. Looks like a little dab of super glue I was using to blend in. There's a few gaps in the clear parts, so using super glue just to fill those in. And obviously missed a bit that I needed to clean up. Always down the leading edge of the wings. Make sure the wing joint is good and clean. No cracks, steps, file marks, sanding marks. You can use circular motion to fill in the panel lines. I always say just use whatever you're comfortable with. So there we go, that is priming. So one thing to do is just, if there's any light spots, just go back over them so you get that consistent colour coat, because that's what we want. And you want to orientate the model as well, that you can get the same distance away, so you're laying down the same layer of paint or same quantity of paint as you are, to get that consistent finish. And this is all about consistency here. You see there the work we've done around the cockpit with the Mr. Surfacer. It's filled in all those gaps beautifully. So a lovely cockpit to fuselage joint. Right, so I'm going to put a drop more paint in the airbrush. I'm also going to take a moment and cover up the Oshkosh that's sitting on the back of my bench, because I really don't want to get a dust and a paint over it. It would be a shame now we've gotten this far down in the build. And obviously when you're airbrushing, there's a chance you could get dust of paint everywhere. So give me a moment to sort myself out and be back, and hopefully by then the model will be primed and we can think about how we're going to put down the colour coats. So back in a minute. Right, welcome back guys, and we're done. One primed aircraft. Quick repair on the glue mark. There was another glue mark here that's been repaired. But I think you can see now that the aircraft is primed, that it has certainly unified the complete model, and I'm quite happy how it's come out, to be honest with you. So next job now is colours. I need to dig them out. So I'm not sure what colours I'm going to use, which for me is a first, because I usually have it all sorted, but this time I haven't. We can, for the flat earth, use XF52, so I might do that. Not sure on the sand colour. I do have Hanat's sand, and I think I've even got their azure blue. But they're not very good paints, so I'm going to go and have a quick look and see what I've got and what can fit, and then we'll come back and we'll think about maybe getting some colour down. So see you shortly. Right, we're back. Paints have been sourced. So for the upper surfaces, we've got XS52 flat earth, which is quite a good representation of RAF flat earth. You can hear the rattle. I have got a very venerable pot of extra acrylics, RAF midstone, that I'm going to try. The paint does look to be okay, so it's got a stainless steel nut in there, so the agitator to get it fully mixed, so it seems okay. And for the undersurfaces, I have got, now this has been mid blue, and I have obviously made a custom mix for RF azure blue, and I've painted here on the instructions there. I've painted a little bit on the paper, and it's a close enough match that I'm happy with. It's definitely got it's lighter, so it's got some white in there. It's also got a hint, but not a lot, because the azure blue had a slightly purpley hue depending on the light you looked at it. It's actually got a little bit of gloss X16 in there, just to give us that nice blue iridescence. So that's what we're going to use for the underside, and that's what we're going to get doing now. Now this is, obviously you can see from the pot, it's very full, so it is actually pre-thinned to probably about 50-50 mix. Pours nicely into the airbrush. Just anytime you pour in, just wipe off the top rim. Try and avoid the paint, the lid sticking to the pot, but it's just to avoid getting a crusty rim around the edge of the pot and end up dropping paint particles into the pot and causing very hell for your airbrush. Right. Put the air pressure up a little bit here. So we're at about 25 psi roughly. And we're going to give it a go. So, how are we going to do it? Well, interestingly, I don't know. There's one or two schools of thought I'm thinking of for this paint job. We can do the usual, paint the inners, leave the darker pan line. Or we can actually paint the panel lines in and then leave the more shading in the centers. I don't know what I'm thinking to do. I maybe should have spent a bit of time thinking about this. Let's just start getting some paint down and see how we get on. So I'll maybe zoom in a little bit. There we go. Move this out of the way. Right, so this airbrush is not spraying so well today. I just wonder if I need to thin this paint just a little bit more. It wouldn't surprise me. If you think of all the different types of paint that's gone into this, I wish I knew the actual mix. I don't. But certainly when you mix matte and glosses together, it does take its toll. So put lid on, just backflow in now, aerate the paint. The other thing, blow it through. I actually think the nozzle of this airbrush has got gub in it. Okay, seems to be working now. Right. I actually think I need to give this airbrush a clean. It is not spraying how it should do. So give me 5 minutes to clean it out and we'll come back and start again. Right, we're back. And yes, the airbrush was mucky. Had some paint contamination between the nozzle and the air cap that was reducing the airflow and stopping the paint delivery, or at least stopping the impeding the Venturi effect, I think it's called. So I have stripped it, cleaned it, put it back together. Certainly I found with Gaahleri airbrushes, if they're not working, it's a me problem, not an airbrush problem. And the me problem is I didn't clean my airbrush properly. So, back of the hand, there we go, beautiful paint delivery. That's what it wasn't doing before, but it's doing it now. So let's get back onto the model. So, same again, it's about 25 psi. And going in with the mottling effect. And this pretty much is my signature paint style now. It works so well for me. I've used it on loads and loads of models, and it's reasonably quick, and you get a good mottled, interesting paint finish compared to just laying colours over. Now, I'm not knocking folk that just lay colours down. There are some amazing modelers that do very simple, uniform colour coats, and then they come back in afterwards with post shading, oil rendering, and produce the most fantastic mottled, interesting paint finishes. One that springs to mind quite readily is Jamie Haggo on the Scale Modelling Cafe channel. Absolutely amazing modeler. Does everything from aircraft to vehicles, and has published his own works. It's been published in numerous magazines, and his painting techniques are second to none. And he makes it look very, very easily. You've got people like Mk1, Mike Rinaldi, all these great modelers. And they all paint differently. And that's the beauty of the hobby, is the fact that we can find our style and stick with it. And this sort of modeling style that I've developed for myself is just my style of painting. That's the one I feel most comfortable with. That's certainly what I say to folk who speak to me about airbrushing and how do you do this and how do you do that. It's like, well, try it, see if you like it, and if you like it, stick with it, improve it, develop it. If you don't quite like it, go and find and look around and see if there's something else you could do. But when you find that one style, just give it a moment to practice. Give it a moment to develop your skills, your confidence, and to some extent vision. Because a lot of modelling is about the modeller's vision of how their build is going to finish up. So you can see there, we're really not taking too long to get this thing painted. And that's the beauty, I think, of this style of painting, is it doesn't take too long. But what it also does is it gives you the opportunity to practice your fine airbrush work. Getting in close, laying down fine mottled patterns. And you're doing it at a time in the build where it's easily corrected. We're not on a finished model where we've done all our masking, painting, blending, and we're really happy with the finish, and then we're coming in and do some post shading or detailed work, and we make an absolute fluff of it, and we spoil the finish that we've developed. We're at a stage in the painting here where we're just working with base coats, and any minor errors can be adapted into the base finish to be then blended back, can be corrected. So that's another reason why I really like this sort of marble pre-shading, because it just helps you develop your skills as a modeler. Now, another guy who is a very, very good exponent of this style of painting is Matt from Duke's Models. He's a fantastic detail modeler, and he certainly introduced me to black basing, as it's sometimes called by folk. It's just, to me, it's a contrast base. But a very, very good, capable modeler. So you'll notice here on the flaps, I've done something slightly different. So we've gone away from the marble mottle to having a more uniform finish, but we're putting streaks in from where, in behind the hinges, and blending them in. And that's just, again, adding to the paint finish, adding variety. Adding a bit of variety. Now there's one problem with airbrushes. If you don't push your needle forward and you press down, you end up with a little drop on the end of the needle and you get that spit. Something you need to try and avoid. Now you'll notice here we've got the riveting where the main front and rear wing spars is. We've left it plain, and that was intentional on my part. So it's going to look darker in its colour. I'll just paint these hatches in, give them a bit more solid colour. And the thing to do as well on the leading edge is make sure we actually do paint the leading edge. So it doesn't take very long to lay in the initial base coats. And you can even vary the texture of your model. You can go to a more blocky model. You can really come in close and put fine pencil line in nearly. You do anything you want. So whatever you do, just experiment, trial. See what you like doing and give it a go. So, again, that's us getting the base coat in. There is kind of a natural divide line there where your joint line was. We can use as the sort of dividing line for the azure blue on the nacelles. And if we look at the instructions, then it's actually a swooped line down. So if we use that join line in the panel as a marker line when we come to paint the top camouflage colours on, we can then swoop that line down and overpaint the azure blue. So if we look at the engine, it sits like that. There's the dividing line there. So if we use that line there as azure blue, and I'm just on the engines, I'm actually just putting a solid coat of Azure Blue down, because we know we're going to be doing some oil work here, so I can get away with it. But that's that. I'll do it on the other one so you can actually see it. My apologies. Right, you're in frame. We're in frame now. So there's the dividing line there, just on the panel joint. As I said, with the other, same as the other side, I'm actually just putting a solid coat of Azure Blue down. And that's simply because we are going to come in with oils, and we'll mucky this engine up and weather it up, so we can actually afford to work from a solid block colour. So that's the nacelles done. Right, so what I'm going to do, because you've pretty much seen how we're going to base coat, I'll put the first primary coat down. So I'm going to take time, I'll do all the underside painting to this level, and then we'll come back and lay down the top coat. And then what we're going to do, I think, is we'll add a little bit of white and just use that then to paint in certain highlights on the underside, bearing in mind that it won't have weathered the same as the top surfaces, but there's no harm in adding a little extra highlight, because when we come in to do the oil weather and stuff, that'll tone it all down. So if we have a little brightness in our highlights, then it'll keep them highlighted and they won't just blend into the finish. So I'll get on and get everything else done with the primer coat, the initial primer coat, the undercoat, mottled coat if you want to call it, and then we'll come back once we've got that done and look at getting the blend coat on. So see you again shortly. Right, welcome back guys, and this is actually the next night from when I finished priming the airframe, but there we go. We've gotten our mottled coat down, we've got the major spar lines highlighted, although this side has got a slight bit of overspray, so they're not as stark as this, but we can blend them together. So we're at the stage of the blend coat now. What I'm planning to do is blend this back, but not blend it back as much as I usually would. I want to try and leave this sharper contrast between the Azure Blue and the darker undercoat, which hopefully will aid us putting a few highlights underneath. If we're not happy, we can always come back in and blend it back further and just cool everything down. But I'm quite interested to do that. What I might even do is put in some highlights before we put the blend coat on, just to enhance the contrast. A few panels here and there. Might be a really good time to do that, because this has obviously had 24 hours to dry and cure, so I'll be able to use some D-tack masking tape, or I do have somewhere in here a stack of post-it notes. Don't know what I've done with them, but they're here anyway, and we could use that for putting like that hard edge highlight contrast in. So that's what I'm thinking to do. What I've also realised I haven't done is I haven't actually primed and painted the undercarriage doors. They were still on the cocktail sticks from having the undercarriage green painted. So I've got to get a bit of XF63 German grey on these as a primer and bring these to the same level of paint finish as the rest of the underside of the fuselage, just so we keep it in continuity with one another. It's quite important to do that, otherwise you'll end up with a totally different paint finish, and that we don't want. We want to keep it all blended nicely together. So I'm going to get some XF63 on those first. It'll take me but a moment, and then we're going to have a look at how we can put in some highlights onto this lower side of the airframe before we put the blend coat on, and see just where we get with our finish. So back in a moment.